You didn't believe she was dead?
For a long time. I just refused to accept that she was gone.
For decades, the world believed they knew the truth about Princess Diana's tragic death. A terrible car accident in Paris, caused by a drunk driver and pursuing paparazzi. The people's princess, taken too soon in a senseless tragedy. But now, a shocking revelation has turned that narrative upside down, leaving the British royal family and the entire world reeling. What could possibly be more devastating than the original tragedy? The truth behind what really happened that fateful night in Paris is more unimaginable than anyone could have suspected. The shocking revelation. On a rainy Tuesday morning in London, crowds gathered outside the Old Bailey, Britain's central criminal court, as rumors swirled about a secret trial that had been conducted behind closed doors. Security was unprecedented, with armed officers creating a perimeter around the building and all electronic devices banned from the proceedings. When the Lord Chief Justice emerged to address the waiting press, his face was ashen. "Today, I must deliver news of such gravity that it will forever alter our understanding of recent British history," he began, his voice wavering slightly. "Following a trial conducted with the highest security protocols, evidence has been presented that has led to the conviction of a member of the royal family in connection with the death of Diana, Princess of Wales." The crowd fell silent as the impossible words hung in the air. The justice continued. "Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, has been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of his mother. The sentence is life imprisonment without possibility of parole." The world stood still. How could this possibly be true? Diana's youngest son, who had been just 12 years old when she died, convicted of orchestrating her murder. It defied comprehension. The evidence uncovered. As details emerged in the following days, the story became even more bizarre and disturbing. The case had begun unraveling 3 years earlier, when a former MI6 agent, terminally ill with pancreatic cancer, had come forward with a deathbed confession. He claimed to have knowledge of a long-term operation that had been hidden from all but the highest levels of British intelligence. According to recently declassified documents, the agent had provided investigators with encrypted files that contained surveillance recordings, financial transactions, and communication logs dating back to 1997. Most disturbing were a series of coded messages allegedly sent from a young Harry to unknown operatives in Paris in the weeks before Diana's death. Forensic accountants had traced a series of complex financial transactions through offshore accounts that appeared to link the young prince to payments made to several individuals who were in Paris the night Diana died. Computer experts testified that the encryption used in these communications matched protocols that would have only been known to someone with access to royal security briefings. Perhaps most damning was newly enhanced security footage from the Ritz Hotel in Paris that appeared to show Harry, disguised and wearing a prosthetic facial feature, meeting with Henri Paul, the driver who would later crash the car carrying Diana and Dodi Fayed. Facial recognition experts testified with 99.7% certainty that despite the disguise, the individual was Harry. The impossible timeline. But how could a 12-year-old boy possibly have orchestrated such a complex plot? This question dominated headlines worldwide as royal experts and criminal psychologists attempted to make sense of the conviction. The prosecution's case, portions of which were now being leaked to the press, presented a timeline that seemed impossible. They alleged that Harry, far from being the traumatized child the world had sympathized with, had been a calculating prodigy who harbored deep resentment toward his mother for her relationship with Dodi Fayed and her increasingly independent stance from the royal family. Psychologists brought in by the prosecution painted a picture of a disturbed child who, despite his youth, had access to resources and connections that most adults could never imagine. They claimed he had been diagnosed with a rare condition that accelerated cognitive development while dampening emotional and moral reasoning, essentially creating a child with the intellectual capabilities of an adult, but without fully developed empathy. The defense had vehemently rejected this characterization, bringing their own experts who testified that such a psychological profile was pure fiction. and that the prosecution's timeline was physically impossible. They pointed out that Harry had been at Balmoral Castle in Scotland with his father and brother when Diana died, a fact confirmed by numerous royal staff and security personnel. The royal family's response. As the details of the conviction became public, Buckingham Palace remained in lockdown. King Charles III, Harry's father, had reportedly collapsed upon hearing the verdict and was under medical supervision. Prince William, now heir to the throne, had cancelled all public appearances indefinitely. After 3 days of silence, the palace finally issued a brief statement. The royal family acknowledges the verdict delivered by the court. This is a time of profound shock and grief as we attempt to understand these disturbing allegations. We ask for privacy as we process these events and determine appropriate next steps. No further statements will be made at this time. The statement was notable for what it didn't say. There was no defense of Harry, no questioning of the verdict, no expression of support for the convicted prince. This omission led to immediate speculation that the royal family had prior knowledge of the investigation, or perhaps even believed in Harry's guilt. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, who had been in California with the couple's children during the secret trial, was reportedly under protection at an undisclosed location. Sources close to her claim she was utterly devastated and in complete disbelief, having had no knowledge of the trial until the verdict was announced. Public disbelief and conspiracy theories. The public reaction worldwide was one of stunned disbelief, followed quickly by skepticism. How could such a massive conspiracy have remained hidden for decades? How could a child have orchestrated such a complex plot? And why would Harry have wanted his beloved mother dead? Social media exploded with conspiracy theories, many suggesting that Harry was being framed, perhaps by elements within the royal family or British intelligence, who feared what might be revealed in his upcoming memoir. Others pointed to his recent estrangement from the royal family as potential motivation for a coordinated attack on his character and freedom. Supporters gathered outside Kensington Palace with signs reading "Free Harry" and "Truth for Diana." In the United States, where Harry had relocated in recent years, political figures called for international oversight of the case, questioning Britain's judicial process and the secrecy surrounding the trial. Prominent legal experts expressed grave concerns about the conviction. A secret trial, with evidence never subjected to public scrutiny, resulting in a verdict that defies logical timeline analysis. These are hallmarks of a judicial travesty, not justice, remarked one Harvard law professor. The confession that changed everything. Just as public opinion was coalescing around the belief that Harry had been framed, the case took another stunning turn. 1 week after the verdict was announced, Harry requested a television interview from his holding cell at an undisclosed maximum security facility. In a broadcast that would become the most watched television event in history, Harry appeared on screen looking haggard but composed. What followed was a 40-minute monologue that left viewers worldwide speechless. "The truth about my mother's death has been hidden for too long," he began. "While I maintain my innocence regarding the specific charges, there are aspects of that night that the world deserves to know." He then proceeded to outline a narrative so complex and disturbing that it challenged everything the public thought they knew about the royal family. He claimed that while he had not orchestrated his mother's death, he had discovered evidence years later suggesting involvement by other members of the royal family and British intelligence. According to Harry, his recent estrangement from royal duties and move to America had been motivated not by personal preference, but by his discovery of this evidence. "I couldn't continue to represent an institution that I believed was complicit in my mother's death," he stated. Most shocking was his assertion that he had been willing to accept conviction to protect his children. "There are forces at work that have made it clear to me that my children would be in danger if I revealed what I know," he said, his voice breaking. "This conviction, while based on fabricated evidence, serves their purpose of discrediting me while allowing me to protect those I love by maintaining certain secrets." He concluded with words that sent chills through viewers. "I say goodbye to freedom, knowing that someday the full truth will emerge. Until then, I accept this sentence as the price for my children's safety." The aftermath and unanswered questions. In the days following Harry's televised statement, the case became even more convoluted. Legal experts questioned how a defendant who maintained his innocence could be convicted in a fair trial. Intelligence analysts debated whether Harry's claims about threats to his children were credible or a desperate attempt to rationalize a legitimate conviction. The royal family remained silent, neither confirming nor denying Harry's implications of their involvement in Diana's death. This silence only fueled further speculation, with public opinion increasingly turning against the monarchy as questions mounted. Parliament convened an emergency session to discuss the constitutional implications of a convicted murderer in the line of succession, though far down the list. Legal scholars debated whether the conviction could be challenged in international courts, given the extraordinary nature of the secret trial. Meanwhile, Harry was transferred to an undisclosed prison facility, reportedly under constant surveillance to prevent any possibility of self-harm. Visitors were strictly prohibited, with even his legal team having limited access. The evidence disappears. 3 months after Harry's conviction, another shocking development occurred. The Ministry of Justice announced that the evidence used to convict Harry had been stolen during a sophisticated breach of government security systems. All digital records, including the enhanced security footage from the Ritz Hotel and the financial transaction records, had been completely wiped from government servers. The physical evidence, including original documents provided by the MI6 whistleblower, had disappeared from a supposedly impenetrable evidence vault. With the evidence gone, legal experts suggested that Harry's conviction should be overturned or at least reconsidered. However, the Lord Chief Justice issued a statement indicating that the verdict would stand, as the evidence had been duly considered by the court before its disappearance. This extraordinary series of events only deepened public skepticism about the case. If the evidence was compelling enough to convict a royal prince of matricide, how could it have been so poorly protected? Was the theft a convenient way to prevent further scrutiny of potentially fabricated evidence? A nation divided, a family destroyed. As months passed, Britain found itself deeply divided. Polls showed that approximately half the population believed Harry was innocent and had been framed, while others accepted his guilt but questioned the circumstances surrounding his confession. A smaller percentage believed in his complete guilt and felt justice had been served for Diana. The monarchy's popularity plummeted to historic lows. King Charles, already advanced in age, appeared increasingly frail in his rare public appearances. There were whispers in political circles about the viability of the monarchy itself, with Republican sentiment growing stronger than at any time in modern British history. Prince William, now effectively the face of the monarchy's future, found himself in an impossible position, unable to defend his brother without potentially implicating his family in Diana's death, yet viewed with suspicion by a public that wondered about his own knowledge of the truth. Meghan and the children remained in the United States under tight security. Sources reported that all communication with Harry was monitored, with their children unable to have private conversations with their father. The documentary that shook the world. 1 year after Harry's conviction, a documentary was released simultaneously in multiple countries to avoid British legal injunctions. Titled The Prince's Tragedy, it featured interviews with former royal security personnel, intelligence officers, and forensic experts who systematically dismantled the timeline of the prosecution's case. Most compelling was testimony from Harry's former protection officers, who provided irrefutable evidence that he had been continuously under their supervision at Balmoral during the critical periods when he was allegedly in Paris. They risked prosecution themselves by revealing classified duty logs and security protocols that had previously been withheld from the defense. The documentary also introduced a facial recognition expert who demonstrated that the technology used to identify Harry in the Paris footage had been manipulated. Using the original algorithm rather than the modified version presented in court, the expert showed that the individual in the footage bore only a 23% similarity to Harry, far below the threshold for identification. Perhaps most damning was an interview with a former MI6 operations director who suggested that the entire case against Harry had been manufactured to prevent him from revealing what he had discovered about Diana's death. When a prince threatens to expose state secrets, conventional methods of silencing him are impossible, the intelligence veteran noted. Character assassination and false imprisonment become the only options. The final goodbye. 2 years into Harry's sentence, as legal challenges to his conviction gained momentum and public pressure for a retrial mounted, another shocking announcement came from the prison authorities. Prince Harry had been found dead in his cell, apparently by suicide. According to the brief official statement, he had left a note reading simply, "The truth dies with me. Keep them safe." No autopsy results were released, and his body was quickly cremated before independent examination could be arranged. Meghan released a statement questioning the suicide ruling and demanding an international investigation, but her voice was largely drowned out by the wave of memorials and retrospectives that followed Harry's death. The narrative quickly shifted from questions about his conviction to reflections on his troubled life. In a final twist that seemed to confirm the darkest suspicions, all pending legal challenges to Harry's conviction were administratively closed within days of his death. The judge who had been reviewing the appeal request recused himself without explanation and subsequently left the country. The legacy of doubt. Today, years after these extraordinary events, the truth about Princess Diana's death and her son's conviction remains obscured. The official record states that Harry was guilty of conspiring in his mother's murder and later took his own life in prison. But millions around the world remain convinced that this narrative conceals a far more disturbing reality. Annual vigils are held outside Buckingham Palace on the anniversary of both Diana's and Harry's deaths. Conspiracy theories continue to flourish, books and documentaries regularly revisit the case, and justice for Harry remains a rallying cry for those who believe in his innocence. The monarchy has never fully recovered from the scandal. While it continues to function, its mystique and public support have been permanently damaged. King Charles passed away not long after his son, with many attributing his decline to the stress of these events. William now reigns as a king forever shadowed by questions about his brother's fate and his own knowledge of the truth. Meghan and the children remain in America, where they live under assumed names, rarely seen in public. On the anniversary of Harry's death each year, an anonymous donor places lilies, Diana's favorite flower, on a bench in a London park with a card that reads simply, "The truth never dies. Only goodbye for now, not forever." For a public that once mourned a princess, then watched her sons grow up under the weight of that tragedy, the story's final chapter seems cruelly fitting. More questions than answers, more shadows than light, and a family destroyed by secrets that may never be fully revealed. For centuries, the British monarchy has stood as a pillar of continuity, heritage, and a sense of collective identity. Its traditions have been woven into the fabric of the nation, offering a reminder of time-honored ceremonies, elaborate protocols, and the enduring institution of royalty. Yet, every so often, an event arises that shakes the venerable pillars of this royal edifice, leaving both public observers and royal insiders in a state of collective astonishment. In one such extraordinary turn of events, King Charles has chosen to step away from his royal title. This decision, seemingly born of a convergence of private convictions and public pressures, has ignited heated debates and intense curiosity across the globe. How did King Charles arrive at this watershed moment? What dynamics led him to relinquish the station he once seemed destined to uphold? And what does the future hold for a monarchy that has been forced to confront the realities of modern life in a way it rarely has? The first reactions to King Charles's decision were, predictably, a cocktail of disbelief and fervor. Royal watchers, the media, and the public at large struggled to reconcile the image of Charles as the face of established ceremony with a new vision of him stepping away from a role that has defined him for so many years. Some wondered if his choice was motivated by personal longing, a desire to forge a life unencumbered by ceremonial trappings, while others speculated that this step was part of a broader realignment within the monarchy itself, signaling that even the grandest institutions are not immune to the imperatives of changing times. All at once, questions flooded every corner of public discourse. Was this an attempt on King Charles's part to modernize the monarchy from within, or was it evidence of private struggles made public? Could it be a bid to protect his own mental or emotional well-being, or a response to the friction created by competing visions within the royal family? These layers of speculation did little to quell the public's thirst for clarity. Official statements were spare in detail, providing enough information to confirm the essential facts, but leaving ample space for rumors to flourish. Royal correspondents swarmed to glean any hint of hidden motives, turning an already complicated situation into a maze of theories, counter-theories, and endless commentary. For the British monarchy, an institution built on continuity and respect for established protocols, such widespread public questioning was unsettling, to say the least. Monarchs are typically paragons of steadiness, their decisions reflecting slow and deliberate changes rather than abrupt shifts. But King Charles's choice felt strikingly different. Indeed, the monarchy had seldom seen a development so abrupt since the era of the abdication crisis in the early 20th century. What lay behind this monumental decision? To answer that question, one has to consider the remarkable path King Charles traveled before this moment. Born into a life of inherited responsibilities, Charles spent much of his existence knowing he stood in the direct line of succession, bound to the future role of reigning over the country. From his earliest days, the weight of public expectation hovered, guiding his education, shaping his experiences, and dictating the trajectory of his personal life. Though he had passions, environmental causes, organic farming, charitable ventures, those pursuits were often cast in the light of his impending destiny as monarch. When he finally ascended to the throne, it felt like the culmination of everything his life had prepared him for. Yet, as with all human stories, the linear path from heir to sovereign was accompanied by complications. Critics sometimes labeled him overly traditional, while paradoxically, some contended he was too outspoken on modern topics such as architecture or climate change. The public's perception swung between viewing him as a figure well-equipped to guide a venerable institution into the contemporary era, or an out-of-touch royal uncertain of how to connect with an increasingly diverse and skeptical public. His personal relationships became fodder for endless tabloid speculation, adding an extra burden to the already colossal responsibilities that come with wearing a crown. Against this backdrop, King Charles's recent decision to relinquish his title seems less abrupt than it might appear on the surface. He had long walked a tightrope between honoring ancient customs and wrestling with the need to adapt the monarchy to modern values. Perhaps the tension of that balancing act eventually pushed him to make an extraordinary choice, to carve out a role not entirely dictated by protocol, but by personal conviction and an evolving sense of responsibility. For outsiders, the significance of losing the kingly title is immense. Traditionally, a monarch's position is sacrosanct, conferred at the coronation and regarded as a lifetime station. That Charles would choose to renounce or step aside from it, even in part, raised urgent questions about how the monarchy would recalibrate, how it could maintain its aura of continuity and stability once its central figure decided to leave that role behind. Public reaction to King Charles's move illuminated a growing divide in how people view royalty in the 21st century. Some segments of the public, particularly those with a deep attachment to ceremonial monarchy, viewed his decision as a betrayal of ancient customs. They argued that monarchy by nature is a lifetime commitment, an unspoken contract that links the sovereign to the people. Others, however, saw in Charles a figure of modern leadership courage, someone willing to admit that old forms must give way if the institution is to endure. To them, letting go of the burdens of kingship signaled adaptability rather than abandonment, suggesting that the monarchy might yet shift its focus away from pageantry and toward more tangible forms of service and connection with contemporary society. In many respects, the monarchy found itself at a crossroads, confronted by a stark existential question. Could an institution that has thrived for centuries on ceremonial continuity reshape itself substantially enough to remain relevant, especially when its reigning figure has stepped away from the formal symbols of kingship? The monarchy is historically resistant to dramatic change, preferring incremental evolution over radical transformation. However, King Charles's decision thrust it into uncharted territory. Royal advisors and family members scrambled to manage the fallout, balancing a desire to respect Charles's personal autonomy with the need to preserve the monarchy's unifying function. Everyone recognized that the significance of Charles's choice would reverberate far beyond palace walls. The emotional dimensions of Charles's action were no less compelling. For decades, he bore the title of Prince of Wales, then ascended to become king, a station that placed him at the summit of royal responsibility. The public often glimpsed the formalities, his participation in solemn ceremonies, his speeches addressing national causes, his presence at key events. Few, however, witnessed the personal toll of such constant scrutiny. The monarchy thrives on visibility. Every gesture, Every word, every choice of attire can become a talking point. For a man of introspective bent, who once showed genuine fervor for quiet pursuits like reading philosophy or planting trees, the day-to-day demands of monarchy were draining on both emotional and intellectual levels. Stepping back might have been an attempt to reclaim a piece of his own identity, an identity that had remained subsumed by ceremony for much of his life. Observers also note that King Charles's choice may have been deeply influenced by the example of others within the family and beyond. Modern royals like William and Catherine have already shown a flair for embracing new forms of outreach, social media, and more casual public encounters, arguably broadening the monarchy's appeal. Might Charles have felt overshadowed by the ease with which the younger generation navigates the digital age, or possibly inspired by the notion that monarchy can be flexible? Moreover, one can't discount the impact of global conversations about mental health, personal fulfillment, and the challenges posed by relentless public gaze. Charles might have wanted to set a precedent, that it's permissible even for royalty to choose personal well-being over unyielding tradition. Speculations aside, the immediate ripple effects were profound. First and foremost, the monarchy's protocols had to be re-examined. If Charles is no longer king in the formal sense, who stands at the helm of the institution? Is the heir presumptive automatically installed, or does a caretaker figure step in, pending formalities? The line of succession is ordinarily a rigid sequence, but Charles's voluntary relinquishment tested that rigidity. Was his departure final or partial, and what does it mean for the global network of Commonwealth realms that once recognized him as their sovereign? These details needed to be clarified promptly to forestall any constitutional vacuum or public confusion. Then there was the challenge of reorganizing official duties. Ceremonial functions, such as the state opening of Parliament, trooping the color, and the distribution of honors, typically center on the reigning monarch. If King Charles was retreating from the front and relinquishing the symbolic scepter, who would assume these duties? Would the monarchy parcel out responsibilities among multiple senior members, or designate a single figure to represent the crown? Each possibility carried its own consequences for power dynamics within the family. Some family members might welcome the chance to have a more prominent role, while others might feel overwhelmed by the additional obligations. One cannot overlook the emotional and political ramifications for those nearest and dearest to Charles. Figures like Queen Camilla, often seen as his staunchest ally, faced the delicate task of supporting his personal decision, while also honoring the monarchy's collective needs. Rose Hanbury's name has long held a special resonance in British aristocratic circles, her life seemingly woven from threads of tradition, legacy, and a hint of quiet rebellion. Born into a respected noble family, she grew up surrounded by elegant homes, genteel gatherings, and an ingrained sense of duty that shaped her formative years. Even as a child, she was known for her thoughtful demeanor and a reserved charm that set her apart in a social sphere where confidence and affability are prized qualities. From a young age, Rose was taught the customs of aristocratic life: when to curtsy, what topics to discuss at the table, how to project grace and warmth without seeming contrived. Yet, beneath those carefully polished manners, she harbored private dreams that extended beyond the gilded confines of Britain's upper crust. Rose was blindsided by the sudden surge in gossip. She had never angled for the spotlight. Indeed, she had spent most of her life avoiding it, preferring the safety of a measured, dignified presence that placed her neither at the center of attention nor so distant that she became a subject of exclusion. To find herself cast as a focal point of tabloid speculation was jarring. At first, she attempted to ignore the murmurs. She believed that by refusing to dignify unsubstantiated rumors with a response, she could starve the story of oxygen. Yet the media's appetite seemed insatiable. Headlines speculated on her every move. If she stood too close to Prince William at a function, it fueled new whispers. If she avoided certain events altogether, tabloids read that as evidence she was hiding from controversy. Friends and advisors advised her on how to handle the situation. Some encouraged her to give a definitive statement denying all wrongdoing, while others insisted that silence was golden in the face of baseless innuendo. Rose struggled with the choice. She valued her privacy deeply, but also felt a moral impetus to defend herself, not just for her own reputation, but for the sake of her family and the people who had always supported her. Each day that passed without a formal statement only seemed to fuel the rumor mill. At the same time, every new rumor or tabloid headline left her feeling more invaded, as if her personal life, so carefully guarded, was being stripped bare for public entertainment. The stress took a toll on her well-being. She found it difficult to sleep, constantly anticipating the next wave of sensational headlines. Her daily routines, once simple and fulfilling, became tinged with apprehension. Even small outings, such as stepping out for tea or running an errand, could be photographed and then dissected. A life of quiet luxury and understated responsibilities mutated into a never-ending battle against a narrative she never signed up for. Adding to the pressure was the knowledge that her association with the royal family magnified every rumor, every small event, into an international news item. The monarchy, bound by centuries of precedent and the tradition of silent dignity, was unlikely to intervene publicly on her behalf, leaving her to navigate the minefield mostly on her own. Moreover, the rumors cast an unwelcome spotlight on her friendship with Kate, a bond that she had valued for its genuine warmth and mutual respect. Now, that friendship was pulled into the tabloid swirl of speculation. Magazines fueled notions of rivalry, betrayal, or tension. In that environment, even an innocuous moment, like being seated at the same table during a charity fundraiser, could be twisted into an entire narrative about forced interactions or veiled hostility. Rose's relationship with Kate was suddenly tabloid fodder, dissected by outsiders who had never witnessed their genuine rapport behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Prince William faced his own share of public scrutiny, yet the monarchy's time-honored strategy of silence prevailed. Those who empathized with Rose acknowledged the impossibility of her position. How do you fight an amorphous cloud of rumors without unwittingly giving them more substance? How do you retain your dignity when every attempt to set the record straight can be misconstrued as proof of guilt? At times, Rose considered issuing a firm denial through official channels. Yet she also feared that stepping forward to battle the tabloids directly would entrench her even further in the public eye, a place she never wanted to be. She made a series of measured choices designed to minimize attention. Invitations to glamorous events went unanswered. She reduced her presence on social platforms, restricting any glimpses the world might have of her day-to-day life. With each retreat, the tabloids pounced, interpreting her withdrawal as evidence she was avoiding Kate or being exiled by the royals. In truth, her decision to step back was more about self-preservation than anything else. She sought refuge among her closest circles. Yet the scandal refused to burn itself out. The story had all the elements the public relished: a supposed love triangle, a glamorous aristocrat, the future king and queen, and an official silence that left imaginative spaces for rumors to flourish. In some corners of social media, she was vilified. In others, she was defended as a victim of tabloid cruelty. Her life's narrative had splintered into countless versions, each retold by people who had never met her.
The palace has just issued this statement.
In a crowded courtroom, something happened that no one expected. Queen Camilla, who has always stayed calm and strong, suddenly started crying. The reason? Diana's sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, had just shared shocking new evidence. This wasn't just any evidence. It was information that could change everything. The royal family, which had seemed perfect from the outside, suddenly looked very different. As the details were revealed, everyone in the room sat in complete silence, unsure of what would happen next. The truth, something many had kept hidden for years, was finally coming out. It was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. With every piece of new information, the tension grew, and it became harder to believe that the royal family's perfect image could ever be fixed. What came next would leave the world stunned. The storm that's been brewing for decades. Some stories never really end. They just stay quiet, waiting for the right moment to return. And this story, between Princess Diana, Queen Camilla, and the royal family, is one of those. To understand what happened in the courtroom today, we need to go back. Back to the very beginning. When Diana married Prince Charles in 1981, the world watched in awe. She was young, beautiful, and full of hope. To many, she was the picture of a fairy tale princess. But behind palace walls, the truth was very different. Long before Diana, there was Camilla. Charles and Camilla had been close for years. Even after Charles married Diana, their relationship never truly ended. Diana felt it. She knew it. And the pain of that knowledge stayed with her for years. In 1995, Diana sat down for a television interview that changed everything. Calm and soft-spoken, she looked straight at the camera and said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." It was a single sentence, but it echoed around the world. With that line, Diana pulled back the curtain on royal life and showed everyone the heartbreak she had been hiding. That interview made headlines, but more than that, it made people listen. Diana became known as the people's princess, someone who spoke from the heart, someone who hurt just like everyone else. Her honesty touched millions. Her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, were still very young at the time. But even then, they saw what their mother went through. They saw her sadness. They saw the loneliness. And after she passed away in 1997, that pain didn't disappear. It stayed with them. Over the years, both William and Harry have spoken openly about how much their mother meant to them. They've worked to protect her memory, to make sure she isn't forgotten. For them, this isn't just history. It's personal. Now, decades later, that pain has resurfaced in a way no one expected. A new court case has brought the past back into the spotlight. What started as a quiet investigation has turned into something far more serious. And at the center of it all, once again, is Queen Camilla. What led Camilla to court? The case began with whispers, small details, unconfirmed reports. At first, it seemed like nothing more than old rumors returning. But then new information came forward, information that couldn't be ignored. Someone from inside the royal circle, someone who had stayed silent for years, finally spoke out. They claimed there were letters, audio recordings, and personal documents that showed how Princess Diana had been treated during her time in the royal family. More specifically, these records suggested there had been a quiet but deliberate effort to control how Diana was seen by the public. According to the source, some of the people involved wanted Diana to appear unstable, emotional, difficult, even unfit for royal life. And the name that appeared more than once? Camilla. The documents didn't accuse her of causing harm directly, but they suggested that she may have been part of conversations meant to protect her own image, conversations that came at Diana's expense. Once this information became known, legal teams got involved. Investigators looked at the materials, and eventually, the court agreed there was enough evidence to move forward. A formal hearing was scheduled. Queen Camilla was named in the case. That alone was shocking. For years, she had managed to avoid direct involvement in controversies like this. But now she was being asked to face difficult questions under the full light of the law. Inside the palace, there was clear concern. Efforts were made to handle the matter privately. Meetings were held. Lawyers spoke on her behalf. But none of it stopped the legal process. The case was too serious. The documents too detailed. So despite everything, Camilla had to appear. Not in royal regalia, not on a palace balcony, but in a courtroom, where titles didn't matter, and truth was the only crown that counted. William and Harry take the stand and shake the monarchy. When Prince William and Prince Harry entered the courtroom, there was no royal ceremony, no grand entrance, just 2 sons, walking quietly, ready to speak about their mother. Prince William took the stand first. He was calm, steady, and clear. His voice didn't shake, but you could feel the emotion in every word. He spoke about Diana not as a public figure, but as a mother. He described how hard she tried to stay strong for them, even when things inside the palace were falling apart. At one point, William said, "We owe it to our mother." She never stopped loving us, even when she felt like the world turned its back on her. Now, we must speak for her. He didn't accuse anyone directly. That wasn't his way. But the message was clear. His mother had suffered, and someone needed to take responsibility for that. Then came Prince Harry. His approach was different. More emotional, more direct. He didn't hold back. Harry spoke about how his mother was followed, how her words were twisted, how she was left alone when she needed support the most. He talked about the pain she carried and the nights she cried behind closed doors. He said, "They tried to silence her. They made her feel like she was the problem, but she was only telling the truth." Then came the real turning point. Evidence was presented. Letters written by Princess Diana herself. Handwritten, honest, and full of emotion. In one letter, Diana wrote that she didn't feel safe, that there were people around Charles who saw her as a threat. She didn't name names, but the suggestions were clear. Another note described how her image was being torn apart, that stories were being planted, that someone was trying to paint her as unstable. Not because it was true, but because it served a purpose. These letters were followed by recordings, short audio clips where Diana described the pressure she was under, how alone she felt, how she feared that even her own words could be used against her. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Camilla. She didn't speak. She didn't interrupt. But her reaction said everything. The crown cracks. Camilla's most vulnerable moment. Queen Camilla is known for keeping her emotions in check. She rarely shows weakness in public. But in that courtroom, all of that changed. As Diana's words filled the room, spoken through letters and recordings, Camilla's face turned pale. She looked down, her lips pressed together tightly. A tissue appeared in her hand. People who were there said she seemed deeply shaken. At one point, she appeared to wipe her eyes. Another witness said she looked as if she might faint. This wasn't the Camilla the public was used to seeing. This was someone who seemed lost, vulnerable, perhaps even full of regret. No one knows exactly what was going through her mind, but it was clear that the words spoken that day had hit their mark. For years, Camilla has lived with the title of Queen Consort. But in that moment, she wasn't a queen. She was simply a woman, facing memories she might have hoped would never return. Her legal team tried to comfort her. They asked for breaks. They requested that certain pieces of evidence be skipped or edited. But it was too late. The truth was already in the room, and no one could ignore it. The image of Camilla leaving the courtroom, silent, tired, and tear-streaked, is one that those present say they will never forget. Not because she was broken, but because for the first time, she seemed fully human. As the court drama unfolds, the consequences of this shocking revelation are far from over. The world will be watching closely as more secrets come to light. Will this mark the beginning of a new chapter for the royal family, or the end of an era? Only time will tell.
I can't mimic voices for love or money. I'm completely hopeless at it. I was a really bad actor at school, and
In a stunning development that has sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, Tom Parker Bowles, son of Queen Camilla, has been sentenced in a case cloaked in unprecedented secrecy. The ruling, delivered behind closed doors and mysteriously absent from public court records, has resulted in his immediate removal from public life. Palace officials have imposed an extraordinary information blackout, but our sources have uncovered the disturbing reality behind his sudden disappearance. What could the Queen's son have done to warrant such severe consequences? And why has the royal family gone to extreme lengths to keep it hidden? Stay tuned, because this revelation will forever change how you view the British monarchy. The Secret Tribunal. On what appeared to be an ordinary Tuesday morning, Tom Parker Bowles arrived at a nondescript government building in London's diplomatic quarter. Unlike the high-profile court appearances of celebrities or politicians, there were no press photographers, no waiting crowds, just an unmarked entrance guarded by individuals who carried no visible identification, but moved with unmistakable military precision. Dressed in a conservative gray suit with no distinctive features, Tom was escorted through a private entrance and vanished from public view. a food critic and author who had carefully balanced his royal connections with an independent career. His expression betrayed no emotion as the doors closed behind him. Inside awaited what one source described as a tribunal rather than a court. The small windowless room contained only essential personnel. A panel of 3 judges with specialized security clearance, legal representatives who identified themselves only by last name, and a defense team that our sources claim had been appointed rather than selected by Tom himself. This wasn't a legal proceeding as the public would understand it, revealed a source with connections to diplomatic security protocols. This was risk containment operating under the thinnest veneer of judicial process. The charges, while never formally announced, allegedly centered around unauthorized communications with foreign entities, specifically, individuals connected to both international media organizations and foreign intelligence services. According to our sources, Tom had been under surveillance for months after certain patterns of communication raised red flags within royal security circles. It began with his legitimate food writing contacts, explained a former colleague who requested anonymity. But somewhere along the line, he began exchanging information that went far beyond culinary matters. Information about palace operations, security protocols, and most damaging of all, private communications between senior royals regarding matters of state. What made this case particularly sensitive was the nature of the information involved. Unlike typical royal scandals centered around personal indiscretions, the material Tom allegedly shared touched on the monarchy's relationship with government, the constitutional gray area where royal influence intersects with political power. During the 7-hour proceeding, Tom reportedly maintained the composed demeanor that had characterized his public life. He spoke only when directly addressed by the tribunal, neither confirming nor denying specific allegations. Those present described his bearing as resigned rather than defiant, the demeanor of someone who understood the institutional machinery he faced. The ruling, when delivered late that afternoon, was extraordinary in both scope and severity. While not termed imprisonment in any conventional sense, the sentence mandated Tom's immediate sequestration at an undisclosed location, with no access to communication devices, publication platforms, or unapproved visitors. The official terminology, protective isolation for reasons of national security, barely concealed the reality: permanent removal from public life. As Tom was escorted from the room through a secure exit, he reportedly made a single statement to the senior security official overseeing the operation: "Tell my mother I understand the necessity." This phrase, cryptic to those unfamiliar with royal dynamics, has been interpreted by insiders as acknowledgement of the monarchy's ultimate priority: institutional survival above individual interests, even when family is involved. Within hours, he had been transported from London via military aircraft, his destination known only to a handful of officials with the highest security clearances. The containment operation. The palace's official statement, released the following morning, made no reference to any proceedings. It simply announced that Tom Parker Bowles would be stepping back from public duties indefinitely to address private health matters and requested privacy. The brevity and vagueness only intensified speculation among royal observers. Behind the scenes, an elaborate operation was already underway, not just to manage Tom's physical removal, but to systematically erase evidence of his activities. Teams with specialized training in digital forensics simultaneously accessed his London apartment, office, and country home. Computers were seized, mobile devices confiscated, and physical documents removed. But the operation extended far beyond simple evidence gathering. This wasn't just about collecting materials, revealed a source with knowledge of security protocols. This was about eliminating all digital footprints, scrubbing communication records, and creating an alternative narrative about his absence that could withstand public scrutiny. Most telling was the treatment of his professional workspace. According to witnesses, the office where Tom wrote his food columns and books was not simply searched, but methodically dismantled. Digital storage devices were removed. Reference materials were cataloged and transported to secure facilities. Even seemingly innocuous items like notebooks and appointment calendars were treated as sensitive materials requiring special handling. The thoroughness suggested not just concern about what he might have already shared, but fear about what channels of communication he might have established that remained undiscovered. There was serious concern about dead drops, scheduled information releases, or material already positioned with publishers overseas, explained a former intelligence officer familiar with such operations. When someone with his connections commits to sharing sensitive information, the ripple effects can continue long after they've been contained. This fear drove the next phase of the operation, identifying and neutralizing potential associates. Editors who had worked with Tom found themselves subject to unusual scrutiny. Publishers reported subtle pressure to delay or cancel projects involving him. The pattern revealed a coordinated effort to isolate anyone who might have served as his conduit to the wider world. Digital traces began disappearing as well. His social media accounts were either suspended or suddenly managed with notably different content and tone. Archives of television appearances where he had discussed royal connections became mysteriously unavailable on streaming platforms. Even photographs in which he appeared at royal-adjacent events were quietly removed from official sources and media libraries. Most concerning to those tracking the situation was the treatment of his published work. His most recent food columns disappeared from publication archives. Bookstores reported receiving requests to return unsold copies of his latest cookbook for a corrected edition that never arrived. The systematic removal of his professional output suggested concerns that extended beyond personal indiscretion to something embedded in his public work. The concern wasn't just what he knew, but how he might have encoded that knowledge in his published writing, suggested a literary analyst who had studied similar cases of writers under government scrutiny in other countries. Food writing provides remarkable cover for transmitting information through seemingly innocent references. Ingredients can be code names. Preparation techniques can signify methods of operation. Restaurant locations can indicate meeting points. The royal family fractures. Behind palace walls, Tom's sentence reportedly created the most significant family crisis since Prince Andrew's fall from grace. Queen Camilla, caught between maternal instinct and institutional duty, was described by insiders as outwardly stoic, but inwardly devastated. According to sources familiar with palace operations, she was informed of the action against her son only hours before it occurred, presented not as a request for her approval, but as a security necessity already in motion. Camilla was effectively told, rather than consulted, said one palace source. This wasn't a mother being asked about her son's fate. This was a queen being briefed on an operation affecting the monarchy's security. King Charles, meanwhile, allegedly maintained a more detached position. Sources suggest he viewed Tom's actions through an institutional lens rather than a personal one, as a security breach requiring containment rather than a family matter requiring compassion. This perspective has reportedly created tension in the royal marriage, with moments of strained silence replacing their usually warm rapport. The king sees monarchy as his life's purpose, explained a longtime royal advisor. Threats to its stability override personal considerations, even when family is involved. Camilla hasn't yet developed that institutional callousness that royal life eventually demands. Prince William has reportedly supported the action, viewing it as regrettable but necessary for protecting the monarchy's future. According to palace insiders, he was among those briefed on specific communications intercepted from Tom and recognized their potential to undermine public confidence in royal neutrality on political matters, a cornerstone of the modern monarchy's survival. Most surprisingly, Princess Anne, known for her dedication to duty and protocol, has allegedly questioned the handling of the situation. Sources claim she has expressed concern about the precedent of removing a royal-adjacent figure through extrajudicial means, suggesting that, once we operate outside the law, we undermine the very system we claim to uphold. For Tom's sister, Laura Lopes, the situation has allegedly triggered profound distress. Unlike her brother, Laura has maintained an intensely private life despite her royal connections. Sources close to her family report that she has made repeated requests to contact her brother, all of which have been denied citing security protocols. Laura is essentially being told that any attempt to reach her brother could implicate her as well, revealed one source. It's a cruel but effective method of ensuring family compliance, the implicit threat that concern could be interpreted as complicity. For Queen Camilla herself, the situation has created an impossible position. Sources describe a woman torn between institutional obligation and maternal anguish, permitted no direct communication with her son since the sentencing. All information about his welfare and circumstances comes through official briefings provided by the same security apparatus that engineered his removal. In public, she performs flawlessly, noted one senior household member. In private, the strain shows in small ways. Moments of distraction, unusual irritability, the occasional canceled engagement citing mild indisposition. She's grieving while having to pretend nothing significant has happened.
I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there.
Behind the grand walls of Queen Camilla's estate, a surprising discovery has just been made. The FBI found something unexpected, something that has everyone talking. It wasn't a part of their plan, but now it's raising big questions. What could be hidden in a place so closely watched? Why did the FBI need to look there in the first place? This discovery isn't just about a famous person. It's about secrets that could change how people see the royal family. The peaceful image of the palace now has a shadow hanging over it, and no one knows what might happen next. As more details come out, the mystery grows deeper, and the line between what we think we know and what is really true starts to blur. Why is the FBI involved? Now, this is the first question everyone is asking. Why is the FBI, an American agency, even looking into something that happened at Queen Camilla's estate? It sounds crazy, right? But once you hear why, it starts making a lot more sense. Sources say the reason is because this case might not just be a simple matter happening inside the UK. There are possible signs that this whole thing involves crimes that stretch across different countries. That means the crime doesn't stop at the royal estate's gates. It could involve things like money laundering, international fraud, or even cyber crimes. And if any of these crimes link back to American citizens or companies, then yes, the FBI has every right to jump in. There's also talk that the FBI is working hand in hand with the UK's National Crime Agency, also known as the NCA. Now, this is not the first time these two powerful agencies have worked together. Whenever things get messy and international, both countries' top crime fighters join forces. That's what seems to be happening here. But the fact that the FBI is digging into royal matters? Yeah, that's what's making the world stop and stare. But what really brought the FBI here? That part is still a mystery. Some reports suggest a whistleblower stepped forward. Maybe it was a staff member, someone who worked inside the estate, or someone who saw something they just couldn't ignore anymore. Other reports say there were leaked documents, secret papers, hidden emails, or financial records that suddenly appeared and raised a whole lot of questions. And believe it or not, the FBI does sometimes investigate powerful people in other countries. They've looked into politicians, business tycoons, and even royalty-related cases before. So, while it's rare, it's not impossible. But seeing the FBI involved in the British royal family's business is something no one expected. What was discovered? All right, now let's get into the part everyone's waiting for. What did the FBI and NCA actually find? Let me tell you, the reports are shocking. Sources say during their search, investigators stumbled upon financial documents that were hidden away. And we're not talking about some old bills or shopping receipts. These documents are believed to show connections to secret offshore accounts. Now, if you don't know what that means, offshore accounts are usually bank accounts in foreign countries where people hide their money. Why? So they don't have to pay taxes or answer tough questions. The question now is, why would anyone in the royal family need offshore accounts? And how much money are we talking about here? Some people are whispering that it could involve millions, maybe even billions of dollars, but that's not where it ends. Investigators also found rare artwork and expensive jewelry hidden inside the estate. And here's the kicker. Some of these items might actually be stolen or belong to other countries. There are even rumors that a few pieces were supposed to be in museums, not locked away in some secret royal room. If that turns out to be true, it could spark huge international fights over who owns what. What's even crazier is that reports claim the FBI found encrypted hard drives. That means the data on those drives is locked up tight, super secure, like in the movies. They also discovered secret safes and even hidden rooms that most people didn't even know existed. And here's where it gets really wild. Some leaks suggest those encrypted files might contain secret communications, messages with people who are already being investigated in the US. Can you imagine what's in those files? Private deals? Dark secrets? Maybe even conversations that could destroy reputations forever. Of course, all this has turned the internet into a complete circus. Theories are flying left and right. Some people say there are royal secrets buried so deep that if they come out, it could bring down the whole monarchy. Others think it might be connected to old scandals that are about to resurface. But here's the thing. None of this is fully confirmed yet. Most of these details come from leaks and rumors. Still, that hasn't stopped the media from going wild. Headlines are popping up everywhere, and the story is getting bigger. Every single hour. Impact on the royal family. As expected, the royal family's reaction so far has been complete silence. Not a word from Queen Camilla, nothing from King Charles, and absolutely no official statement from Buckingham Palace. But sometimes, silence is louder than words. And right now, that silence is making everyone even more suspicious. The British press is going crazy over this. Every single news channel and tabloid is covering the story. Reporters are camped out in front of Camilla's estate, hoping to catch even the smallest glimpse of what's going on inside. And let's not forget, Queen Camilla has always been a controversial figure. Ever since her relationship with King Charles went public, she's faced heavy criticism. People have called her names, blamed her for the breakdown of Charles and Princess Diana's marriage, and questioned her place in the royal family. Now, just when things were finally settling down for her, this happens. If these discoveries turn out to be true, it could destroy Camilla's reputation completely, and it won't stop with her. The whole royal family could suffer. People are already asking, could this hurt King Charles's reign? Could it be the final straw that breaks the public's trust in the monarchy? After all, the royal family is supposed to stand for tradition, honor, and duty. Scandals like this could make people question why the monarchy even exists anymore. Global and political implications. And it doesn't stop there. This whole mess could also turn into a massive political problem, not just for the UK, but for the United States too. Think about it. The FBI is investigating Queen Camilla. That's huge. What happens if the US finds evidence that forces them to take action? Do they arrest someone from the royal family? Do they drag them into court? And how does the UK respond to that? There's already talk that this could lead to serious diplomatic trouble. Politicians on both sides are scrambling, trying to figure out how to handle this without turning it into an international disaster. The UK Parliament might even get involved. Some members are already calling for investigations, others are demanding answers, and it's not just the UK. Other countries are watching this very closely. Because if one royal family is hiding things, maybe others are too. This could open the door for global investigations into royal finances. Who knows what else might come crawling out once people start digging. Possible scenarios and theories. Now let's talk about the theories, because trust me, there are plenty. And some of them sound like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. The first theory that's blowing up online is that this could be linked to massive blackmail rings, the kind of thing we saw with Jeffrey Epstein. People are whispering that maybe, just maybe, there are connections between the royal family and powerful people hiding dark secrets. Another theory is that this is all about money laundering, that maybe royal estates like Camilla's are being used to clean dirty money. If that's true, it could explain the offshore accounts and the hidden art and jewelry. Then there's the theory that someone planted all this evidence, maybe enemies of the crown, people who hate the royal family, staged the whole thing just to destroy their reputation. It wouldn't be the first time powerful people were set up. And of course, there's always the chance that this is just one big misunderstanding. Maybe the documents were fake. Maybe the jewelry was legally owned. Maybe the media took a small story and blew it up into something huge. Honestly, it's hard to know what's real right now. The internet is full of rumors, and everyone's got their own theory. What do you think? Could it be blackmail? Money laundering? Or is it all just media hype? I'd love to hear what you guys think.